Darkcast Network. Out of the shadows comes the best of indie podcasts.
Bigfoot, also commonly referred to as Sasquatch, is a large and hairy human-like mythological creature purportedly inhabiting forests in North America, particularly the Pacific Northwest. Enthusiasts of the subject have offered various forms of dubious evidence to prove Bigfoot's existence, including anecdotal claims of sightings, as well as alleged photos, video, and audio recordings, hair samples, and large casts of footprints. Now, most of this evidence has been since identified as hoaxes or misidentification, and a majority of scientists don't find any of the remaining evidence compelling. Join me tonight as we delve into something a little different. Moving away from true crime for a moment, let's look at the supernatural aspect of some of the entities from our stories. Tonight, we're going to go beyond the myth, Bigfoot. My name is DJ, and this is a mythical true crime podcast. Hello, and welcome to tonight's show. I felt like taking a little detour from our normal macabre true crime tales involving the supernatural to taking a deeper dive into the supernatural itself. Now, I'm not replacing my true crime series as I'm continuing finding cases that just have a little bit of the paranormal. Hearing feedback from some of my listeners, they wanted to hear a little bit more about the supernatural itself. So, sit back, relax. It's going to be a long one. We're going to do a deep dive into the world of Bigfoot. Now, Bigfoot is often described as a large, muscular, bipedal ape, or a human-like creature covered with black, dark brown, reddish hair. Anecdotal descriptions estimate its height roughly between 6 and 9 feet tall, with some descriptions having the creature standing as high as 15 feet. Alleged observations describe Bigfoot as more human than ape, particularly in regards to its face. In 1971, multiple people in the Daly's, Oregon, filed a police report describing an overgrown ape, and one man claiming to have sighted the creature in the scope of his rifle, but couldn't bring himself to shoot it because, quote, it looked more human than animal. Common descriptions include broad shoulders, no visible neck, and long arms, with many skeptics attributing misidentification of a bear standing upright. Some alleged nighttime sightings have also stated that the creature's eyes glow, yellow or red. However, eye shine is not present in humans or any other great apes that are known, and so the proposed explanations for observable eye shine off of the ground in the forest include owls, raccoons, possums perched up in the foliage. Michael Rugg, the owner of the Bigfoot Discovery Museum, claims to have smelled Bigfoot once, stating, imagine a skunk that had rolled around in dead animals and had hung around in garbage pits. The enormous footprints of which this creature's named are claimed to be as large as 14 inches long and 8 inches wide. Now, some footprint casts contain claw marks, making them seem likely that they came from known animals, such as bears, who also have 5 toes and claws. Now, looking into the history of Bigfoot, many of the indigenous cultures of the North American continent include tales of mysterious, hair-covered creatures living in the forests. And according to anthropologist David Dangling, these legends existed long before contemporary reports of the creature being described as Bigfoot. These stories differed with the details regionally and between different families in the same community, and are particularly prevalent in the Pacific Northwest. For example, on the Tool River Indian Reservation, petroglyphs created by the tribe of Yokuts in the site of that's called Painted Rock are some of the depictions of a group of Bigfoot called the Family. Now, the local tribespeople call that largest of the glyphs Hairy Man and are estimated to be between 500 to 1,000 years old. In the 16th century, Spanish explorers and Mexican settlers also told tales of the Los Vigilantes Oscuros, or Dark Watchers, large creatures alleged to stalk the camps at night. In the region which is now the Mississippi, a Jesuit priest was living with a group of natives in the year 1721 and reported stories of hairy creatures in the forests known to scream loudly and steal livestock. Ecologist Robert Pyle argues that most cultures have accounts of human like giants in all their folk history, expressing a need for something larger than life, as he says. Each language has its name for a creature featured in some local version of a legend. Many of the names seem to go along the lines of a wild man or hairy man, although the other names are more common with the actions that were performed, such as eating clams or shaking trees. The Chehalis people tell stories of Saskets, a shape-shifting creature that protects their forests. The name Sasquatch is an angelicized version of the Saskets, roughly translating to hairy man. Members of the Lumi tell tales of creatures known as the Temoweskis. Stories are similar to that of each other in the general descriptions of Sasquatch, but details differed among different family accounts concerning the creature's diet, for example, and other activities. Some regional versions also tell of more threatening creatures, the Kauai, which is a nocturnal race, and children are warned to be staying away from them so that the monsters would not come and carry them off to be killed. The Iroquois tell of an aggressive, hair-covered giant with rock-hard skin known as the Otnegirha, which translates to stone giant, more commonly referred to as the Genoaska. In 1847, Paul Kane reported stories of natives about Sakooms, which is a race of cannibalistic wild men living in the peak mountains of Mount St. Helens, Oregon. U.S. President Teddy Roosevelt himself, in his 1893 book, The Wilderness Hunter, writes about a story that he was told by an elderly mountain man about a foul-smelling bipedal creature that ransacked his beaver trapping camp, stalked him for days, and later became hostile when it fatally broke his companion's neck. Now, Roosevelt notes that the man's name was Bauman. He noted that Bauman appeared fearful in telling him that story, but attributed the trapper's German ancestry to have potentially influenced him. Less menacing versions have also been recorded, such as one by a man named Reverend Walker in 1840, which Walker says he's a missionary who recorded stories of giants among the natives near Spokane, Washington. These giants were said to live on and around the peaks of the nearby mountains, stealing salmon from fishermen' nets. Now, one of the first incidences that was recorded was July 16, 1924, in an article written in the Argonian. It made national headlines when it was published, and it described a conflict between a group of gold prospectors and a group of, quote, ape men on the gorge of Mount St. Helens, Oregon. Now, the prospectors reported they encountered these large gorilla men near their remote cabin. Now, one of the men, named Fred Beck, indicated that he was struck one of the creatures with rifle fire. That night, they reported being come under an attack by the creatures, who said that they were throwing large rocks at the cabin, damaging the roof, and even knocking Beck unconscious. The men fled the area the following morning, and the U.S. Forest Service investigated the site of the alleged incident. Investigators found no compelling evidence whatsoever of the event and concluded that it was likely a fabrication. Stories of large, hair-covered bipedal men, or mountain devils, have also been persistent pieces of folklore in that area for centuries, prior to the alleged incident. Today, that area is also known as Ape Canyon and is cemented within Bigfoot-related folklore. Now, the origin of the name Bigfoot actually comes from 1958 by a man named Jerry Crew, who was a bulldozer operator for a logging company in Humboldt County, California, when he discovered a large 16-inch human-like footprint sunk deep into the mud in the Six Rivers National Forest area. Upon informing his coworkers, many had claimed to see similar tracks on previous job sites, and was as well as telling of odd incidences such as an oil drum weighing over 450 pounds being moved without any explanation. Now, the logging company men soon began utilizing Bigfoot to describe the apparent culprit. Crew initially believed that someone was playing a prank on them, and after observing more of these massive footprints, he contacted a reporter named Andrew Gonzalez at the Humboldt Times newspaper. Now, Gonzalez interviewed many of the lumber workers and wrote several articles about these mysterious footprints, introducing the name Bigfoot into the vernacular in relation to the tracks found in the local tales of large, wild, hairy men. A plaster cast was made of these footprints, and Crew appeared holding one of the casts in the front page newspaper on the October 6th, 1958 page. The story spread rapidly as Gonzalez began receiving hundreds of correspondences from major media outlets, including the New York and Los Angeles Times. As a result, the term Bigfoot became widespread as a reference for an apparently large, unknown creature leaving massive footprints in Northern California. As a result, Willow Creek and Humboldt County are considered some of the, quote, Bigfoot capital of the world. Now, in 2002, the family of Jerry Crew's deceased co-worker Ray Wallace revealed a collection of large, carved wooden feet in his basement. They stated that Wallace had secretly made the footprints and was responsible for the tracks discovered by Crew. Wallace was inspired by another hoaxer he knew, named Rant Mullins, who revealed the information about his hoaxes in 1982. Now, in the 1930s in Toledo, Washington, Mullins and a group of other foresters carved pairs of large wooden feet and used them to create footprints in mud to scare huckleberry pickers at the Gifford National Forest. Now, the group mate also claimed that they were responsible for the hoaxing the alleged Ape Canyon incident in 1924. Mullins and the group of foresters began referring to themselves as the St. Helen Apes and would later have a cave dedicated to them. Now, Wallace, also from Toledo, knew Mullins and stated that he collaborated with him to obtain a pair of the original large wooden feet and subsequently used them to create the footprints on the 1958 construction site as a means to scare away potential thieves. After this quick message, we'll be right back.
Hello there, listeners. Whether you're new or you've been with me from the start, a great way to catch up and dive deeper into the world of mythical true crime is to check out my earlier shows. I've covered everything from Bigfoot to aliens and ghosts. Take a moment and browse through the past episodes, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Your support means everything to me.
Now, to go even further back, in the 1830s, the Wendat chief was nicknamed Bigfoot due to his significant size, strength, and large feet. Several natives chiefs were named Bigfoot, and it's also today synonymous with the area of the Walworth County, Wisconsin, and has a state park and school named after him. William A. Wallace, a famous 19th century Texas Ranger, was nicknamed Bigfoot due to his large feet, and today a town is named after him, Bigfoot, Texas. What's funny enough, in the late 19th, early 20th centuries, at least two enormous marauding grizzly bears were found noted by the press, each nicknamed Bigfoot. The first grizzly bear, called Bigfoot, was reportedly killed around Fresno, California in about 1895 after it was killing sheep in the area for over 15 years. His weight was estimated around 2,000 pounds. The second one was active in the Idaho area in 1890s, 1900s between the Snake and Salmon rivers and had apparently supernatural powers attributed to it. Now, there's many various explanations that have been suggested for sightings to have offered conjecture on what existing animal has to be misidentified in supposed sightings of Bigfoot. Scientists typically attribute sightings to hoaxes and misidentifications of known animals and their tracks, particularly the black bears. Now, scientists theorize that the mistaken identification for the American black bears as Bigfoot are likely an explanation for the most reported sightings, particularly when observers view a subject from afar in dense foliage and in poor lighting conditions. Additionally, black bears have been observed and recorded walking upright, often as a result of some kind of injury. Now, walking upright, typical adult black bears can stand roughly between 5 and 7 feet tall, and grizzly bears roughly 8 to 9 feet tall, both in the range of the anecdotal Bigfoot reports. Now, according to a data scientist named Flo Foxon, more people report seeing Bigfoot in specific areas with documented black bear populations. Foxon concludes, quote, "If Bigfoot is there, it may be many bears." Fox acknowledges that the alleged Bigfoot sightings have been reported in areas with minimal to no black bear populations, which then she states, although this may be interpreted as evidence for the existence of some unknown hominid in North America, it also explains it can be explained by misidentification of other animals, including humans, among other possibilities. Now, other possibilities, she stated, could also be sightings of Bigfoot, simply people observing or misidentifying known great apes, such as chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans that have escaped from captivity in such as zoos, circuses, or even exotic pets belonging to private owners. This explanation, though, is often proposed in relation to the skunk ape in the South, as some scientists argue that the humid subtropical climate in that area of the southeastern United States could potentially support a population of escaped apes. Now, as I said before, even humans have been mistaken for Bigfoot, and in some incidences leading to several injuries. In 2013, a 21-year-old man in Oklahoma was arrested after he told law enforcement that he accidentally shot his friend in the back while the group was allegedly hunting for Bigfoot. Now, in 2017, a shamanist wearing clothing made of animal furs was vacationing in the North Carolina forest when local reports of an alleged Bigfoot sighting started flooding into the area. So much so that the Greenville Police Department issued a public notice not to shoot Bigfoot for fear that it would be mistakenly injure or kill someone in a fursuit. And so much as recently as 2018, when a person was shot multiple times by a hunter in Helena, Montana, who later claimed that he mistook it for Bigfoot. Additionally, some have attributed feral humans or hermits living in the wilderness as an explanation for an alleged Bigfoot sighting. Now, one story, called The Wild Man of the Navidad, tells a tale of a wild ape man who roamed the wilderness in eastern Texas in the mid 19th century, stealing food and goods from residences. Now, a search party even allegedly captured an escaped African slave in the area, attributed to that story. During the 1980s, several psychologically damaged American Vietnam veterans were stated by the state of Washington's Veterans Affairs Director, Randy Fisher, to have been living in a remote wooded area inside the state. Some have proposed that pareidolia may be explaining Bigfoot sightings, specifically the tendency to observe human-like faces and figures in the natural environment. Now, pareidolia is a tendency for perception to impose a meaningful interpretation on the nebulous stimuli, usually visual, so that one sees an object, a pattern, or a meaning where there really is none. Photos and videos of poor quality allegedly depict Bigfoot are often attributed to this phenomena and are commonly referred to humorously as blob squatch. Now, majority of mainstream scientists also maintain the source of the sounds that are also often attributed to Bigfoot are either hoaxes, anthropomorphization, or likely misidentification and produced by known animals, such as owls, wolves, coyotes, even foxes. And both Bigfoot believers and non-believers agree that many of the reported sightings are in fact hoaxes. Author Jerome Clark argues that the Jacko affair was a hoax. Now, what the Jacko affair was, keeping it short, was a Canadian newspaper story about a gorilla supposedly caught near Yale, British Columbia in 1884. The story was called "What Is It? A Strange Creature Captured Above Yale, a British Columbia Gorilla." It appeared in the newspaper The Daily Colonist, July 4th, 1884. The article even cites research by John Green, who found that several contemporaneous British Columbia newspapers regarded the alleged capture highly dubious. He notes that the Mainland Guardian of the New Westminster, British Columbia area wrote, quote, "Absurdity is written on the face of it." Bigfoot proponents Grover Krantz and Jeffrey Bourne also believe that Bigfoot could be a relic population of an extinct Southeast Asian species, ape species, called Gigantopithecus blacki. According to Bourne, G. blacki, which is shortened, may be following some of the other main species of animals that migrated across the Bering Land Bridge to the Americas. Now, to date, no Gigantopithecus fossils have ever been found in any of the Americas. In Asia, the only recovered fossils have been mandibles and teeth, leaving uncertainty about G. blacki's locomotion. Krantz argued that G. blacki could have been bipedal, since based on the exploitation of the shape of its mandible. Now, the relevant part of the mandible is not present in any of these fossils. The consensus view is that G. blacki was quadrupedal, and enormous mass would have made it very difficult to adopt a bipedal gait. Anthropologist Matt Carmett criticizes G. blacki's hypothesis, stating, "The trouble with this account that the Gigantopithecus was not a hominin, and maybe not even a crown group hominid. Yet the physical evidence implies that Bigfoot is an upright biped with buttocks and long, stout toes." Paleoanthropologist Bernard Campbell even wrote that Gigantopithecus is in fact extinct, has been questioned by those who believe it survives as a Yeti in the Himalayas or the Sasquatch in northwest American coast, but the evidence to these creatures are just not convincing. Which brings us to a primatologist, John Napier, and an anthropologist named Gordon Streisenberg, who have suggested a species of possible extinct hominid as a candidate for Bigfoot's identity, called the Parathropus robustus, which with the gorilla-like crested skull and bipedal walk, despite the fact that these fossils are only found in Africa. Michael Rugg of the Bigfoot Discovery Museum presented a comparison between a human, Gigantopithecus, and Meganthropus skulls, which are reconstructions made by Grover Krantz, in particular episodes 131 and 132 of Bigfoot Discovery Museum Show. Now, Bigfoot enthusiasts that think that Bigfoot might be the missing link between apes and humans have promoted that idea that Bigfoot is a descendant of the Gigantopithecus blacki, but that ape diverged from orangutans around 12 million years ago, and it's not related to humans. Some even suggest that the Neanderthal and Homo erectus to be the creature, but like all other great apes, there's no remains of any of these species have been found in the Americas. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Do you believe in Bigfoot? Do you think it's an ancient creature that tells stories from natives? Do you think it's a descendant of Gigantopithecus? Or do you think it's some kind of subspecies that we're closely related to humans? Let me know in the comments. Send me a message. I'd like to hear it. Now, the scientific view of this, many experts, their consensus is the same. The allegations of the existence of Bigfoot is just not credible. Belief in such an existence of such a large ape-like creature is often attributed to hoaxes, confusion, and delusion rather than the sightings of an actual genuine creature. In fact, in a 1996 USA Today article, Washington State zoologist John Crane stated, quote, "There's no such thing as Bigfoot. No data other than the material that's clearly being fabricated has ever been presented." As with other similar beings, climate and food supply issues would make the creature's survival of reported habitats very unlikely. Bigfoot is allegedly to live in regions unusual for the large non-human primate, such as temperate latitudes in the northern hemisphere. All recognize non-human apes to be found in the tropics of Africa and Asia. Great apes have not been found in any fossil record in any of the Americas, and no Bigfoot remains have ever been found. Philip Stevens, a cultural anthropologist at the University of Buffalo, summarized in his scientific consensus as follows: "It defies all logic that there's a population of these things sufficient to keep them going. What it takes to maintain any species, especially a long-lived species, is you gotta have a breeding population. That requires a substantial number, spread out over a fairly wide area, where there can be sufficient food and shelter to keep hidden from all investigators looking for them." Now, in the 1970s, when Bigfoot experts were frequently given high profile media coverage. McLeod wrote, in his scientific community generally avoided lending any credence to the fringe theories and refusing even to debate them. Criminologist Jane Goodall was even asked about her personal opinion about Bigfoot in a 2002 interview in the National Public Radio's Science Friday. After laughing, she joked, "Well, you'd be amazed on what I have to tell you, that I'm sure that they exist." Later, she added, "Well, I'm a romantic, so I always wanted them to exist. You know, why isn't there any body? I can't answer that. And maybe they don't exist, but I want them to." In 2012, when asked about this in the Huffington Post, Goodall even said, quote, "I'm fascinated and would actually love for them to exist. Of course, it's strange that there has never been a single authentic hide or hair of Bigfoot, even by all accounts that I've read." Paleontologist and author Darren Nash stated that in 2016, an article of Scientific America, that if Bigfoot existed, an abundance of evidence would have also existed, but it cannot be found anywhere, making the existence of such this creature exceedingly unlikely. Now, a lot of the scientific community asks three major questions. If Bigfoot existed, so would consistent reports of uniform vocalizations throughout North America can be identified for any existing large animal in that region, rather than these random and varied Bigfoot sounds haphazardly reported. If Bigfoot existed, so would many tracks that would easily be trackable by experts to find, just as easily to find tracks of any other rare megafauna in North America, rather than the complete lack of such tracks alongside other quote unquote tracks that experts agree are fraudulent. Finally, another question: if Bigfoot existed, an abundance of Bigfoot DNA would have already been found. Again, it has been found for similar animals, instead of the current state of affairs, where there are no confirmed DNA samples of any such creature whatsoever. How many shows have we seen where they pull Bigfoot hair off the branches and then send it in for study? What do they come back as? Typically inconclusive, or a species that we already know of. There's been many formal studies, one such conducted by John Napier, and he even published his book, Bigfoot, the Yeti, and Sasquatch in Myth and Reality in 1973. Napier wrote that if in a conclusion can be reached based on the scant, hard evidence, science must declare Bigfoot doesn't exist. However, he did find it difficult to entirely reject thousands of alleged tracks, scattered over 125,000 square miles, or just to dismiss all the many hundreds of eyewitness accounts. Napier concluded, though, that he's convinced that Sasquatch exists, but whether it's all it's cracked up to be is to be another matter altogether. There must be something in the Northwest American woods that needs explaining, and that something leaves man-like footprints. Now, there are claims to the origins and characteristics of Bigfoot varied, as I said earlier. Subject to Bigfoot has crossed over all other paranormal claims, which includes Bigfoot being an extraterrestrial, being related to UFOs, and that Bigfoot's even psychic, can shapeshift and even cross different dimensions or completely supernatural origin. Additionally, claims regarding Bigfoot to be associated with conspiracies, such as a government cover-up. Now, for sightings wise, according to Live Science, there have been over 10,000 reported Bigfoot sightings on the continental United States alone, with reports from every state except for the island of Hawaii. About 1/3 of all the claims of Bigfoot locate in the Pacific Northwest, with the remaining reports spread throughout the rest of the Americas. Most reports are considered mistakes or hoaxes, even by those researchers who claim Bigfoot exists. Now, sightings predominantly occur in the northwestern region of Washington State, Oregon, Northern California, and the British Columbia. According to the data collected and the files that I've reviewed from the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, Bigfoot Sightings Database, which was last updated in 2019, Washington has about 2,000 reported sightings. California has about 1,600 sightings. Pennsylvania has over 1,300, and New York and Oregon are about tied with over 1,000. Texas just has a little over 800. The debate over the legitimacy of any of these sightings reached a peak in the 1970s, and Bigfoot has been regarded as the first widely polarized example of pseudoscience in American culture. Now, besides some of the behavior that we've seen or heard from Bigfoot researchers, they allege that Bigfoot throws large rocks as a territorial display or for communication. Other alleged behaviors include audible blows, struck against trees, or wood knocking. Skeptics could argue that this behavior is easily hoaxed. Allegedly, or additionally, structures have been broken and twisted foliage has seemed to have placed specific areas that have attributed to the Bigfoot behavior. In some of these reports, lodgepole pine and other small trees have been observed bent over, uprooted, and stacked in patterns that have weaved and crisscrossed, leading some to theorize that they are potential territorial markings. In Washington state, a team of amateur Bigfoot researchers who call themselves the Olympic Project claim to have discovered a collection of these nests. A group brought in primologists to study them with the conclusion that they appear to have been created by a primate. Now, could that primate be human? Alleged vocalizations such as howls, screams, moans, and grunts, even whistles, have some kind of supposed language were reported and allegedly recorded. Some of these vocalization recordings have been analyzed by individuals, such as retired U.S. Navy cryptological linguist Scott Nelson. Now, after he analyzed listening to audio recordings from the early 1970s from the Sierra Nevada mountains dubbed the Sierra Sounds, he stated, quote, "It is definitely a language. It is definitely not human in origin, and it could not have been faked." Les Stroud from the Survivorman series has spoken on strange vocalizations he heard in the wilderness while filming his show that he stated it sounded primate in origin. Another number of other anecdotal reports that Bigfoot encounters have been resulted in witnesses claiming to be disoriented, dizzy, and anxious. Some Bigfoot researchers, such as the paranormal author Nick Redfern, have proposed that Bigfoot may produce infrasound, which could explain reports of this nature. Now, some recent encounters, such as in Folk, Arkansas in 1971, a family reported that a large hair-covered creature startled a woman after reaching through her window. This alleged incident caused hysteria in the area and inspired the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek in 1972. Later, it was deemed a hoax. In 1974, the New York Times presented a dubious tale of Albert Ostman, a Canadian prospector who stated that he was kidnapped and held captive by a family of Bigfoot for 6 days in 1924, only to be let go. In the 90s, there were several reports, one from a U.S. Forest Service ranger, Paul Freeman, who's a self-proclaimed Bigfoot researcher, videotaping a Bigfoot he reported encountered in Blue Mountains, Oregon. The tape, often referred to as the Freeman footage, continues to be scrutinized and its authenticity debated. Freeman had previously gained media recognition in the 80s after he documented Bigfoot tracks claiming they possessed dermal ridges, also like fingerprints but on your feet. Later in 1996, Lori Pate, who was camping on a camping trip near the Washington state Canadian border, videotaped a dark subject she reported encountering running across a field and claimed it was Bigfoot. Film you can look up online, dubbed the Memorial Day Bigfoot footage, is often depicted in Bigfoot-related media, most notably in the 2003 documentary Sasquatch: Legend Meets Science. Now, in his research, Daniel Perez, a skeptical inquirer, concluded that the footage was likely a hoax perpetuated by a human in a gorilla costume. Now, recently in 2018, Bigfoot researcher Claudia Akeley garnered international attention after filing a lawsuit with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife for failing to acknowledge the existence of Bigfoot. Akeley claimed that to have encountered and filmed a Bigfoot in San Bernardino Mountains in 2017, describing what she saw as a Neanderthal man with a lot of hair. Akeley contacted emergency services as well as the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. A state investigator concluded that she encountered a bear. Now, she died in 2023, And until her death, she ran an online support group for individuals claiming to have experienced psychological trauma as a result of alleged Bigfoot encounters. Now, the most well known of all, also known as the Patterson-Gimlin film, was recorded October 20th, 1967 by Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin in the area known as Bluff Creek in Northern California. If you've ever seen a picture of Bigfoot, it's most likely from this film. It's a 59.5-second long video that's become the most iconic piece of Bigfoot lore, and it continues to be highly scrutinized and analyzed and debated. Academic experts from all related fields have typically judged the film for its providing, quote, no supportive data to any scientific value, with perhaps the most common proposed explanation that it being a hoax. Now, a body print taken in the year 2000 from the Gifford National Forest in Washington, dubbed the Sakukum cast, is also believed by some to have been made by Bigfoot that sat down in the mud to eat fruit left out by researchers during a filming of an episode on the Animal X television show. Skeptics believe the cast has been made by a known animal, such as an elk. They also captured alleged footprints suggested by Bigfoot enthusiasts as evidence that the creature exists. In 2007, Bigfoot researchers, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization claimed that they had photographs in their possession depicting a juvenile Bigfoot captured on a camera trap in the Allegheny National Forest in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Game Commission, however, stated that the photos were a bear suffering from mange. The Pennsylvania Game Commission unsuccessfully attempted to locate the suspected mangy bear, and scientist Vanessa Woods was called in after estimating that the subject of the photo had approximately 22-inch long arms and an 18 3/4-inch torso, concluded it was comparable to that of a chimpanzee. Now, with all this supposed real evidence, there have been documented hoaxes. For example, in 2008, Rick Dyer and Matthew Whitten posted a YouTube video claiming that they discovered the body of a dead Bigfoot in a forest in northern Georgia, which they nicknamed Rick Matt. Tom Biscardi was contacted to investigate, and Dyer and Whitten received $50,000 for searching for Bigfoot contest on Searching for Bigfoot Inc. The story was covered by many major news networks, including the BBC, CNN, ABC, and Fox. Soon after the press conference, the alleged Bigfoot body was delivered in a block of ice in a freezer in the Searching for Bigfoot team. When the contents were thawed, observers found that the hair was not real, the head was hollow, and the feet were rubber. Dyer and Whitten admitted both that it was a hoax after being confronted by Steve Coles, the executive director of SasquatchDetective.com. Tom Biscardi, mentioned earlier, a longtime Bigfoot enthusiast and CEO of Searching for Bigfoot Inc., held that contest for $50,000. He actually appeared on a Coast to Coast AM paranormal radio show on July 14th, 2005, and said that he was, quote, 98% sure that his group was able to capture a Bigfoot that they had been tracking at Happy Camp, California area. A month later, he announced the same radio station that he had access to the captured Bigfoot and arranged a pay-per-view event for people to see it. He appeared on Coast to Coast AM again a few days later and announced that there was no captive Bigfoot. He blamed an unnamed woman for misleading him and said that the show's audiences were gullible. In August 2012, a man in Montana was actually killed, unfortunately, by a car while perpetrating a Bigfoot hoax using a ghillie suit. And all the way up to recently, July 7th, 2022, a wildlife educator and media personality, Coyote Peterson, released a post on Facebook in which he claimed to have discovered a large primate skull in British Columbia, indicating that he had excavated and smuggled the skull into the United States for primologist review. He further claimed to have initially hidden the discovery due to concerns that the government agencies may intervene. The post went viral and quickly garnered attention from multiple scientists who dismissed the skull as likely a replica of a gorilla skull. Darren Nash, a vertebrate paleontologist stated that, "I'm told that Coyote Peterson does this sort of thing fairly often as clickbait. And that little stunt done to promote an upcoming video, maybe it's meant to not be taken but as harmless fun. But in an age where anti scientific feelings and conspiracy cultures are a serious problem, it, again, isn't really a good look. I think this stunt has backfired." Now, Bigfoot has a demonstrated impact in popular culture and has been compared to that of Michael Jordan as a cultural icon. October 20th, the anniversary of the Patterson Gimlin film, is considered the sort of National Sasquatch Awareness Day. In 2018, Smithsonian Magazine declared interest in the existence of the creature is at an all-time high. Laws and ordinances exist regarding harming or killing a Bigfoot creature, specifically in the state of Washington. Now, in 1969, the Stamania County passed a law which made it illegal to kill Bigfoot and made it punishable by a felony conviction, resulting in a monetary fine of up to $10,000 and 5 years imprisonment. In 1984, a law was amended to a misdemeanor, and the entire county was declared a Sasquatch refuge. Whatcom County followed suit in 1991, declaring their county a Sasquatch protection and refuge area. And even in 2022, Grays Harbor County in Washington passed a similar resolution after a local elementary school in the area submitted a classroom project asking for a Sasquatch protection and refuge area in their area to be granted. In 2021, Representative Justin Humphrey, in an effort to bolster tourism, proposed an official Bigfoot hunting season in Oklahoma, indicating that the Wildlife Conservation Commission would regulate permits and the state would offer a $3 million bounty on any creature that was captured alive and unharmed. In 2015, a world champion taxidermist, Ken Walker, completed what he believes is the most lifelike Bigfoot model based on the subject of the Patterson Gimlin film. He entered it into the 2015 World Taxidermy and Fish Carving Championship in Springfield, Missouri, and was the subject of Dan Wayne's 2019 documentary, Big Fur. I also just learned that there is a championship for taxidermy. Nothing against taxidermists, didn't know it existed. Some have been critical in Bigfoot's rise to fame, arguing that the appearance of the creatures in cartoons, reality shows, and even advertisements further reduce the potential validity of serious scientific research. Others propose that society's fascination with the concept of Bigfoot stems from human interest in the mystery, paranormal, and loneliness. In a recent 2022 article discussing Bigfoot sightings, a journalist named John Kellman of the Chicago Tribune stated that as UFOs have gained newfound respect, becoming a subject of a Pentagon investigative panel, the alleged Bigfoot sighting is a reminder that other paranormal phenomena is still out there and entrancing true believers and amusing skeptics. The act of searching for and researching the creatures are often referred to as squatching or squatchin', popularized by the Animal Planet series Finding Bigfoot, which the researchers and believers are often called squatchers. Well, unfortunately, listeners, I cannot consider myself a squatcher. I do not believe that Bigfoot is a real creature, nor do I think it have ever existed. You could call me squatchin', as I did do some research in finding out this information. And with that, I believe that concludes tonight's deep dive into the world of Bigfoot. I hope you enjoyed Beyond the Myth. This is a little spin-off, if you will, from the traditional mythical true crime podcast. I won't do many of these. If you have a subject that you'd like me to go over and do deep dive into, please drop me a line. Send me a comment. I'm active on all social media platforms. Also, you can comment on your favorite podcast player. I do hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. My name is DJ. Good night.
And that concludes another captivating episode, delving into the world of mythical true crime. I appreciate you joining me tonight as we listen to the facts from these true crime tales. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll uncover even more mysteries. Until then, thank you for listening to tonight's episode. Good night.